hands. Her unbuttoned sleeves fell naturally, and I saw her forearms very white and not so thin as one might have supposed. I had seen her arms before, although not frequently, but on this occasion, sight of them impressed me greatly. The veins were so blue that despite the dimness of the light I could trace every one of them. Even more than the book, Conscienka's presence had served to keep me awake. I went on talking about holy days in the country and in the city, and about whatever else came to my lips. I jumped from subject to subject, sometimes returning to an earlier one, and I laughed in order to make her laugh, so that I could see her white, shining, even teeth. Her eyes were not really black, but were very dark. Her nose thin, and slightly curved, gave her face an air of interrogation. Whenever I raised my voice a little, she hushed me. "Softly, Mamma may wake up." And she did not move from that position, which filled me with delight. So close were our faces. Really, there was no need to speak loudly in order to be heard. We both whispered. I more than she, because I had more to say. At times she became serious, very serious, with her brow a bit wrinkled. After a while she tired, and changed both position and place. She came around the table and sat on the sofa. I turned my head and could see the tip of her slippers, but only for as long as it took for her to sit down. In her negligee was long and quickly covered them. I remember that they were black. Conscienka said very softly, "Mamma's room is quite a distance away, but she sleeps so lightly. If she wakes up now, poor thing, it will take her a long time to fall asleep again." "I'm like that, too." "What?" she asked, leaning forward to hear better. I moved to the chair immediately next to the sofa and repeated what I had said. She laughed at the coincidence, for she too was a light sleeper. We were all light sleepers. "I'm just like Mamma. When I wake up, I can't fall asleep again. I roll all over the bed, I get up, I light the candle, I walk around, I lie down again, and nothing happens." "Like tonight?" No, she hastened. I didn't understand her denial. Perhaps she didn't understand it either. She took the ends of her belt and tapped them on her knees, or rather on her right knee, for she had crossed her legs. Then she began to talk about dreams. She said she had only had one nightmare in her whole life. It was once during her childhood. She wanted to know whether I have ever had a nightmare. Thus the conversation re-engaged itself and moved along, slowly, continuously, and I forgot about the hour and about Mass. Whenever I finished a bit of narrative or an explanation, she asked a question or brought up some new point, and I started talking again. Now and then she had to caution me. "Softly, softly." Sometimes there were pauses. Twice I thought she was asleep. But her eyes shut for a moment, quickly opened. They showed neither sleepiness nor fatigue, as though she had shut them merely so that she could see better. On one of these occasions I think she noticed that I was absorbed in her, and I remember that she shut her eyes again. Whether hurriedly or slowly I do not remember. Some of my recollections of that evening seem abortive or confused. I get mixed up, I contradict myself. One thing I remember vividly is that at a certain moment she, who till then had been such engaging company but nothing more, suddenly became beautiful. So very beautiful. She stood up with her arms crossed. I, out of respect for her, stirred myself to rise. She did not want me to. She put one of her hands on my shoulder, and I remained seated. I thought she was going to say something, but she trembled as if she had a chill, turned her back, and sat in the chair where she had found me reading. She glanced at the mirror above the sofa and began to talk about two engravings that were hanging on the wall. Almost done. "These pictures are getting old. I've asked Cinquincio to buy new ones." Cinquincio was her husband's nickname. The picture bespoke the man's principal interest. One was of Cleopatra. I no longer remember the subject of the other, but there were women in it. Both were banal. In those days, I did not know they were ugly. "They're pretty," I said. "Yes, but they're stained, and besides, to tell the truth, I prefer pictures of saints. These are better for bachelor's quarters or a barber shop." "A barber shop? I don't think you'd ever been to. But I can imagine what the customers there talk about while they're waiting. Girls and flirtations, and naturally the proprietor wants to please them with pictures they'll like." "But I think pictures like that don't belong in the home. That's what I think. But I have a lot of queer ideas. Anyway, I don't like them. I have an old lady of the Immaculate Conception, my patron saint. It's very lovely, but it's a statue. It can't be hung on the wall, and I wouldn't want it to here anyway. I keep it in my little oratory." The oratory brought to mind Mass. I thought it might be time to go, and was about to say so. I think I even opened my mouth, but shut it before I could speak, so that I could go on listening to what she was saying, so sweetly, so graciously, so gently that it drugged my soul. She spoke of her religious devotions as a child and as a young girl. Then she told me about dances and walks and trips to the islands of Piqueta, all mixed together almost without interruption. When she tired of the past, she spoke of the present, of household matters, of family cares, which, before her marriage, everyone said would be terrible, but really they were nothing. She didn't mention it, but I knew she had been 27 when she married. She no longer moved about as at first, and hardly changed position. Her eyes seemed smaller, and she began to look idly about at the walls. Her eyes... We must change the wallpaper, she said, as if talking to herself. I agreed, just to say something, to shake off my magnetic trace of whatever one may call the condition that thickened my tongue and benumbed my senses. I wished and I did not wish to end the conversation. I tried to take my eyes from her, and did so out of respect, but afraid she would think I was tired of looking at her, when in truth I was not. I turned again towards her. The conversation was dying away. In the street, absolute stillness. He stopped talking, and for some time, I cannot say how long, sat there in silence. The only sound was the gnawing of a rat in the study. It stirred me from my solemnness. I wanted to talk about it, but didn't know how to begin. Konchienko seemed to be abstracted. Suddenly I heard a beating on the window and a voice shouting, "Midnight Mass! Midnight Mass!" "There's your friend," she said, rising. "It's funny. You were going to wake him, and here he is coming to wake you. Hurry, it must be late." "Goodbye." "Is it time already?" "Of course." "Midnight Mass!" came the voice from outside, with more beating on the window. "Hurry, hurry, don't make him wait. It was my fault. Goodbye until tomorrow." And with her rocking gait, Konchienko walked softly down the hall. I went out into the street, and with my friend proceeded to the church. During Mass, Konchienko kept appearing between me and the priest. Charge this to my 17 years. Next morning at breakfast I spoke of the midnight Mass and of the people I had seen at church, without, however, exciting Konchienko's interest. During the day I found her, as always, natural, benign, with nothing to suggest the conversation of the prior evening. A few days later I went to Mangruptiba. When I returned to Rio in March, I learned the notary had died of apoplexy. Konchienko was living in the Anghengo novel district, but I neither visited nor met her. I learned later she had married her husband's apprentice clerk. So, that's what happens when you don't take action. You don't get anything. And he had to remember for the rest of his life that he didn't take advantage of his love.